Hi, welcome back. Thanks to all the great responses and comments about the first few videos in this series. Yes, definitely going back to do more about ancient Babylon soon. Also, Tiamat, the foundation stories, how they could originate in Wales rather than Babylon, which is another big subject, and how the British people went there and then back again. We'll come on to all that. What I'm going to do is one more thing from Wilson and Blackett about the dragons and this idea that the dragon is a manifestation or a symbol of heavenly objects, in particular comets devastating the earth. Alright, so I'm going to read straight through the notes. There's loads of them. We will be putting a book together as soon as possible. Press all the buttons. Right, the coming of the dragon. Around the period of the 6th century AD, the most awesome event in the whole of British recorded and remembered history took place. As far as can be gleaned and calculated from the many surviving records, a tremendous catastrophe and parallel disaster came upon the British nation in AD 562. This gigantic destruction is awesomely detailed in a number of authentic records, yet no conventional history book written for education or for schools or the public at large ever mentions a single word of it. It's as if the Hebrews were to omit Moses and the Exodus from Egypt from their records. It defies the human imagination that ancient British writers set down the story for all the future generations. These records still exist, and yet there is a huge cover-up and a vast pretense that what is recorded never ever happened. In AD 562, a great comet was seen in the skies and approached close to planet Earth. Whether this comet struck the Earth or merely passed very close to a collision course, showering the Earth with monstrous masses of debris from its great thousands of miles long tails, is not quite clear. What is recorded is that Britain was devastated by the enormous blast of this collision. Vast tracts of the island kingdom were laid into total ruin. Mud slithered everywhere. The poisonous clouds enveloped the land. Nothing could live in the wide sweep of the stricken areas. Everything died. Then animals, both domesticated and wild, the birds, the fish, the reptiles, all died. Even the plants would not grow. All across Britain, the Roman era, cities and towns, and the great country villas and farms, all tottered into ruin. The walls were shaken to their very foundations and toppled, and the roofs slithered down in a rush of debris. The ancient capital of Uriconium, Roxeter, which I'm going to come back to soon, fell in ruin, never to again be inhabited or rebuilt. Amidst this colossal shambles of total ruin, the survivors stumbled around under darkened skies full of poisonous clouds, the droplets from which brought death to those who were unfortunate enough to be soaked by them. A great powerful state had been brought to near total destruction, and inevitable ruin in one disastrous moment. So the story of the great wasteland sung about by medieval romance troubadours and written of by medieval poets came into being. In a situation where the courts in exile in northern France and Brittany, and they're sending knights, brave knights, out to go back to Britain to check to see if it's habitable again. What's the state of the land? And this would seem to be the inspiration for the stories of questing knights going out on their perilous journeys. So the question here, of course, is, the first question that strikes to mind, is this even possible? Well, in modern times, a similar event occurred in the vast empty wastes of Siberia. On the 30th of August 1908, a vast object from outer space struck the remote district of Tunguska in Siberia. The exact nature of this object is not known, and it's still debated. It may have been a vast ball of gases, a comet, or even a meteor, and less likely an asteroid. Modern Russian scientists have even proposed that whatever it was caused a vast atomic explosion. The result, however, was that the entire area of hundreds of miles around was entirely devastated. It took investigators 18 years to reach the centre point of the explosion. It seems very much to match with the Dark Age history accounts, the British accounts, of what was called the terrific blast. And the important thing here that Wilson and Blackett expand on is that the majority of the Earth is actually oceans, Pacific, Atlantic, and then you've got great wastelands like Siberia or Antarctica and vast tracts of South America. Events like this could have happened more often than we realise and would just not be recorded or known about. And they published a lot of this as a warning that something like this could happen again. And we need to learn from the lessons going all the way back to ancient Babylon. So the matter of comets or other heavenly bodies in collision with or in near collision with planet Earth has been much researched, the principal exponents being Ignatius Donnelly, Edmund Hawley and Immanuel Velikovsky. You're not going to go through all that now. What we're going to do is give a flavour of what the British records say about this. A huge blast and vast screeching or squealing noises, earthquakes, vast dark clouds, poisonous fumes, inflammable liquids or gases which burned fiercely, probably like naphtha, fires raging over devastated lands. So look at the most recent one we know about, this Tunguska. So here's some reports. In 1908, at 7:17 a.m. in the morning of 30th of June, people travelling on the Trans-Siberian Railway saw a glowing mass like a fireball shoot across the sky, out across the empty wastes of the steppes. Then a thunderous shock shook the train, and the din of vast explosions followed. The shock, similar to that of an earthquake, is recorded as causing Irkutsk seismograph to quiver for almost an hour, and seismographic stations all over planet Earth also recorded the quake of this explosion. Later researchers found whole forests where the trees had been sheared off at the stumps, even up to 40 miles from the centre of the blast. Trees stood bare without branches for miles around. There were unmistakable traces of a vast conflagration at the centre areas. So you can go through all this then. Now, it is what struck Britain in the ancient times, similar or the same as this event. Some of the descriptions, I mentioned one in the previous video where we talked about there appeared a star of great magnitude and brilliance with a single beam shining from it. And as we go through the British records, you find more and more and more of this. And what Wilson and Blackett done with the research then, we've taken this out into French records and other records, all referring to the same thing. And there's no other records here. The sky appeared as if on fire, so that after the light at night became as vivid as that of day for 9 days, after which intense heat came on, and a general want of waters in rivers and wells. Now, if we look at what happened after the Tunguska, we see a very similar situation. You see that the people there, they did all these kind of crazy things. People were out. There we are. One feature of this strange event needs to be detailed. For 9 days and nights after the explosion, the whole of Western Europe was lit up 24 hours a day, as if it were noon. People did all the silly things that they always do in strange circumstances. They played tennis all night. They sat in their gardens reading books, and they went fishing and golfing and whatever. They also photographed each other during 9 days of noonlight. In this circumstance, it is not perhaps time to look again at the much derided British record, set down from old manuscripts by Edward Williams, the much maligned Yollo. This is exactly as he described it in his forgery, which obviously was 100 years before Tunguska, when he fabricated this idea of 9 days of day and night of light. Anyway, so some more examples here. As the dragon comes more and more into this, because what would happen is that the stories would get written, and the saints would be taking all the credit for getting rid of these dragons, these comets. And if you look in records, you'll find, used to be far, far more of these things in ancient times. You go out to Roman records, they're getting 50 or 60 of these things a year. Not like the modern, they're very rare now. There's theories for that. The energy is burnt out over time or whatever. But this is not really what we're here to discuss. What we're looking at is how this ties in. Like, for example, Gildas, in his De Excidio, which is of the destruction, in the most graphic form, and he attributed this disaster, was it the comet he's talking about? It sounds like. He says a punishment from God and the enormous devastation of Britain. You've also got the life of St. Ephrem, and he described it, and a beast obeyed, rolling his dreadful eye, uttering such an awful hissing noise that the shore resounded for miles. Vomiting blood as he went, he mounted the black rock of Hurglas, and where the last terrible roar he flung himself into the sea, where he perished miserably in the waters. It sounds like a comet splashing down in the Atlantic. St. Paul Aurelian, St. Samson, who is the son of Anna, who's the daughter of King Myrig, and a nephew of King Arthur, and dozens of others, all fled across to the court to get away from the devastation. And what's fascinating here is we got lots and lots of records. You can date it. You can narrow it down to round about 572. Now, here's the rub. It's not in any history books. It doesn't fit with the mainstream narrative. And it's described like this. Now, while no historian in Britain was prepared to hazard his or her career by entering what is forbidden territory and writing about the unmentionable, the physicists, astrophysicists, and astronomers of the world, they were unaware that there was a prohibition. They were studying, amongst other matters, the periodic comets which enter the solar system and offer possible threats to our planet Earth. Vital to these studies are historical references to both ancient cometary disasters and to near passages of comets coming close to Earth. Prominent among these researchers is Dr. Victor Klube of the Astrophysics Department of Oxford University. And Dr. Klube recognised the descriptions of the awesome disaster which overwhelmed Britain in the mid-6th century as the direct result of a close encounter or partial collision with a comet. The main body may not have struck Britain, but a huge shower of debris and boulders whistling along in the cometary train certainly showered the entire island. The wreckage was titanic and estimated as equivalent to 100 Hiroshima-type atomic bombs. This, of course, opened up the subject of 6th century British history and records. Here is the explanation of how the Arthurian kingdom began its collapse, exactly as it is stated in the much abused and allegedly forged and fabricated records, which do not conform to the 500 years of London government political policy. It raises the question of why ministers of state who have never read any of Wilson and Blackett's books write letters declaring them to be idiots. Apparently, the astronomers and astrophysicists are considered respected, reputable men, as they indeed are. But just by using the same data and coming to the same conclusions in greater detail, Blackett and Wilson's, as historians, are called misguided fools. And it does raise a big issue here. We have a situation where none of this is just even considered. It's very frustrating. As you'll see, there's more and more and more and more evidence becoming more and more powerful and strong. There's going to be a lot more of it, a lot more of the ancients, a lot more of the Babylonians. So remember to let people know, subscribe, and I'll see you. Don't forget, live show on Sunday, 8 o'clock. And until then, wish you all the very best. Hedwig.